Well, good morning, everybody. I will officially call to order the regular meeting of Coachella Valley Water District Board of Directors. Today is July 27, 2021, both here in Palm Desert and streaming worldwide. Let me make some introductory remarks and then we'll get into it. I'd like to make clear for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under the governor's executive orders in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. Today's meeting is presented in a hybrid format, both in person at CVWD's Steve Robbins Administration Building and via Zoom. The governor's executive orders N25-20 and N29-20 suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act, and district board members and staff may choose to participate in person or by video conference. This meeting is being live streamed on the district's website and YouTube channel. Members of the public may also join the meeting via Zoom. Zoom details are listed on the agenda. Members of the public who wish to comment on any item on the agenda or within the jurisdiction of the district will have 3 minutes. Public comment may be provided in person, via Zoom, or by emailing the clerk of the board in advance of the meeting. Such comments will be part of the board meeting record. And I believe if you're on Zoom, if you do the hand raise feature, that will indicate that you want to make comments. Yeah. And since we do have board members attending virtually today, I'll make sure that we call on them specifically as we move through the items, and we will do all of our votes by roll call. All right. And I think that gets us to the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And roll call, please.
President Powell.
Here.
Vice President Estrada will be joining us via Zoom. He is just not logged in yet, and I will note when he arrives. Director Bianco.
Here.
Director Aguilar.
Here.
And Director Nelson.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. All right, so I'm not aware of any additions or deletions, but we were going to change the order of some items, assuming that Director Estrada joins the meeting, because he will have to leave for another item by 10. So right after public hearing, we'll go into we'll see if he shows. We'll wait till he gets on the line. We're going to continue the normal order, but we may take the meetings early and also item 10E early. Let's see how it goes. So already talked about public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to make public comment at this time? Nope. Consent calendar. We have items 5A through I. Oh, thanks. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second. Okay, roll call, please.
President Powell.
Aye.
Director Bianco.
Aye.
Director Aguilar.
Aye.
And Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Is this David Aguilar here? I think
Yes.
it is. Oh, good morning. All right, well then, I know, and we haven't had a lot of these in-person things.
So brave.
So what we do have an employee recognition today with 20 years of service. It's an anniversary, not a retirement. So to explain why you're ready to work. This is David Aguilar. David began his career at CVWD on July 9th, 2001 in domestic operations as part of the valve and hydrant crew, where he spent a year before transferring to the auto shop as an automotive technician 1. David held the automotive technician position for 3 years prior to attaining his current role as a welder 1, which he has held for the past 16 years. David has played a vital role in the welding shop's success as he has successfully performed countless repairs ranging from pipeline failures to fabricating items for facility upgrades. David's strongest attribute is his attention to detail and passion for all things related to welding. This has allowed David to deploy a very strong skill set and keen awareness of facilities and appurtenances that have been instrumental in mitigating service interruptions to both our internal and external customers. And David's love for welding also keeps him busy working on vehicles in his free time, as he is an avid off-roader who enjoys rock crawling with his friends. So congratulations on 20 years, and come on up. I think we have...
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
That's for you.
Just one?
Just thank you for this big opportunity. Been a privilege working here. I'm still working here. 20 years is a lot. Without trying to cause any trouble. Just come to work every day. Yeah. Hopefully you guys seen some of my work that I've done, some of the guys I work with and stuff like that. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to see what it was about.
Thank you.
And off he goes.
Yeah, okay. So we have two public hearings this morning. And we'll get into the first one. This one is, make sure I have the right one. Yep. At this time, staff will provide a presentation on the domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments to be assessed for fiscal year 2021-22 through collection on the tax rolls. Making the presentation is Albert Galindo.
Good morning.
What is yours? Good morning.
My name is Albert Galindo. I am the accountant for the Customer Billing Department. I will be presenting the availability assessments. Within all district areas of the district, other than improvement districts numbers 6, 7, 8, 18, 19, and service area 35, the amount of the levy is $10 per year for each acre of land, or $10 per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre. Within the improvement district numbers 10, 13, 14, and 15, the amount of the levy is $30 per year for each acre of land, or $30 per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre for domestic water service availability. Within district number 11, the amount of the levy is $23 per year for each acre of land, or $23 per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre for domestic water service availability. Within all sanitation improvement districts, the amount of the levy is $30 per year for each acre of land, or 30 years per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre for sewage and wastewater service availability.
Okay, thank you. This is the time and place fixed for the public hearing on the proposed domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments in Riverside and Imperial counties for the fiscal year 2021 and 22. Clerk Bermudez, have we completed proper notification of this hearing?
Yes, Mr. President, as proof of proper notice of this hearing, we have the proofs of publication from the Desert Sun and Imperial Valley Press and the affidavit of posting.
Thank you. This public hearing is being held pursuant to a notice duly published and recently mailed as required by law to all property owners in the district who own land which is subject to annual domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments for fiscal year 2021-22. These assessments are unchanged from previous years. The report containing the description of each parcel of land within the district upon which the assessments will be imposed has been filed with the clerk of the board. I don't imagine we have any discussion. So at this time, I declare the public hearing open and will request that those wishing to speak, please give your name, property location, and limit your comment to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to comment? We'll give it a little bit of time.
Okay, so I'm running down here quickly. I have no idea, I'm used to having a podium right here.
I know, we moved it
Yeah.
up there, but no,
I'm just gonna stand here.
just have a seat
Go ahead.
and push,
Yeah.
but if you push the button, make sure the little blue.
We just need to pick up your voice, is all.
How about we do that? I think it'll probably hear me. Yes? Are we hearing me? Yes? Yeah, of course they are. So good morning, everyone. My name is Gretchen Gutierrez. I'm the CEO of the Desert Valley Builders Association. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you all this morning. In your board packet is a letter that we provided to the district several months ago as we were reviewing this particular study. We'd also like to say thank you specifically to Carrie Swain for her assistance as your staff
She's on
liaison
that
to
next
us while we were going through the review. We are endorsing the use of the studied materials that the Matrix Consulting Group provided to you for this fee schedule. But we'd like to make a note, and I know it's probably buried way down in your.
So
We have
This is the
right
next
to
item.
inform
No,
on
you're not.
things.
It's on the next, we didn't want to cut you off.
Sorry. All right, I'm
you,
gonna finish and then
you're
I'll
welcome
move
to
on.
continue.
All right, so I'm at my last point. Sorry.
Good practice.
It is. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done this in person. We just wanted to make note that the use of the meter surcharges may be contestable, and that when you go forward with reviewing your capacity and backup fees on those studies, that you review that particular line item. So that's it. Is it further down on the agenda?
It's just the next one. We'll be there in a moment.
Why didn't y'all tell me that before I got up here? Jeez, okay.
I thought maybe you had
Thank
something.
you so much for letting me speak.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna get your staff person.
But we're gonna remember everything you said for the next item.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Mr. President, for the record, I would just like to note that Director Estrada joined us at 8:09.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're still in the public hearing. Is there anyone else? This is on the availability assessments, of course. Is there anybody else wishing to comment? Is there anybody online wishing to comment?
Let me check the attendees.
We normally won't get
Oh,
comments
we
on
don't.
this.
We have 2 participants, but they are both consultants on pending for different items.
Okay, thank you. There being no further comments, I declare the hearing closed. Clerk Bermudez, have we received any written communication regarding the availability assessments?
No written communications have been received to date.
Thank you. Council Frey, will you comment on the public hearing?
This public hearing has been held as required by law. The board has given the property owners the right to be heard. All legal requirements have been satisfied, and the board can now proceed in making its decision on the establishment of the domestic water service and sewage waste service availability assessments to be collected on the tax rolls.
Thank you. And at this time, do I have a motion to adopt a resolution to levy domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments and authorize transfer of assessments to fiscal year 21-22 county tax rolls?
So move.
Second.
Okay, so then we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion before we go to a vote? We'll be doing a roll call vote. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Sure. President Powell?
Aye.
Vice President Estrada?
Aye.
Director Bianco?
Aye.
Director Aguilar?
Aye.
And Director Nelson?
Aye.
Thank you.
So that passed 5-0. And that was our first public hearing. We have another public hearing, 8B. I could almost recite your comments back to you. At this time, staff will provide a presentation on the proposed changes and/or additions to the ordinance establishing a schedule of special charges for miscellaneous services. Following the presentation, we will open the public hearing.
President Powell, I just wanted to introduce our controller, Carrie Swain, who's going to be presenting this item. But I also would like to recognize my good friend Gretchen Gutierrez from the Desert Valley Builders Association, who happens to be here to speak on this item later.
Thank you.
I gave her a quarter to get up early.
Yeah, so Carrie, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, members of the board and Director Powell, for giving us the opportunity to present the proposed user fee charges. I think on the line, we have also Courtney Ramos and Khushbu Hussain from Matrix Consulting available for questions as well after the presentation. I do want to acknowledge staff's contribution across the departments, all the departments across the district. Without their support, we would not have been able to come up with the proposed fees. In accordance with, again, government code, a notice of public hearing was noticed on the paper on July 15th and July 22nd. I apologize, I had a typo on the board action, put 15th and 27th. It was actually posted on the 15th and the 22nd. So this is just the agenda just shows a quick overview of the areas that we will be covering throughout the presentation. So the purpose of this study. So ideally, we would like to complete a comprehensive cost allocation plan and miscellaneous user fee and charges study every 3 to 5 years. The last time the district completed a study was back in 2012, so it's been quite a while. So in 2018, the district did contract with Matrix Consulting to to develop an appropriate overhead cost allocation plan, which was completed back in 2019. And that was presented to the board back then. I did attach a copy of the cost allocation plan for your reference. And today we are presenting the comprehensive review of the miscellaneous fees and charges, which the report is also attached to this agenda item. So the study's tasks are centered in 4 primary areas. First, we review the existing user fees that are currently being charged and compare that against the actual cost of providing these existing services. I will expand a little bit more on the methodology on the next following slides. We then identified if there are any services that the district currently provides, but we're not charging, and should we be charging for those. On the other hand, we also identified user fees that are no longer applicable, so we have proposed to remove those as well. And finally, we, of course, ensure that we're in compliance with government regulations. Government regulation stipulates that user fees charged cannot exceed the estimated reasonable cost of providing these services. So the study was conducted using a widely accepted methodology known as bottom-up. This estimation approach uses time spent and other attributed factors to determine cost. In summary, it uses a granular level of detail to determine an overall cost for the service. So the consultant and the staff completed a review of all existing and potential user fees, which included cataloging each of them. Then we worked closely with each department performing the service, and we were able to establish time estimates in each position performing the services. Using the cost allocation plan submitted back in 2019 as a guide, the indirect district overhead allocation plan was used for the indirect costs. These indirect costs are mostly made up of support services that we cannot directly charge to the project itself, such as admin support, finance, and billing for these services. Using the information gathered, we determined a fully burdened rate for each position, and then we analyzed the gaps between the revenues and the cost. This is just a quick snapshot, a picture of how the calculation was arrived. Again, using the time estimate approach is reasonable because the consultant and staff that were interviewed, staff is familiar with the level of work that is needed to perform the service. So the estimates are based on the actual performance of the service. The time estimates does not include any unusual or normal time spent. That was taken out of the study. We just used the average time spent and the positions that normally perform the task. So any abnormal occurrence, whether there's a difficult task that happened, we made sure that we did not include that on the average calculation. So these are the current findings of the study. So the district is recovering about 33% of education-based fees, which is within about 20 to 40% of typical for this type of services across other agencies. And then we're recovering about 72% on a per unit basis for its developmental related activities, which is slightly less than the 80 to 100% average across typically seen for these type of activities. We did consider the phase approach for the cost recovery plan. However, staff do recommend a full cost recovery at 100% because any cost that is not fully recovered would then be applied. We would then have to use non-rate revenues to supplement the cost, to fund these costs, will then again put pressure on rates. So we are recommending full cost recovery on these rates. The next study just kind of provides a snapshot of a few examples of the fees. As you can see, there's a lot of fees on the ordinances. So we just picked several examples to provide you a comparison. For like the first graph, that meter only, that's just the meter only, does not include the services to install it. The difference between the cost of the meter, it's $937 and we're only charging $500. So that's about an 87% variance between the cost that's costing us for the meters, what we're charging as well.
I have one question because I'm a little confused. So on before you said that we were collecting 72%.
Yes. So it's kind of like an average of all the fees.
Okay.
So it's kind of, it varies
these fees, I mean, look like they're going up more than the 28%.
Yes. So it's kind of more like an average of all the fees that are in there that we have. We have quite a bit of them. So we kind of took like an average of all increases. But of course it fluctuates. I think on the proposed, I did provide a proposed schedule that shows the percentage difference on the board agenda item as well. If I take down all the meter costs and not just the 1.5, it's about 15 to 16%. If I do all the meter sizes, regardless of the size and the type of service, it's about 15 to 16%. But for this particular one, I chose just one section, which is the meter only.
Well, what does the average new home use on a meter here?
I think it's 1.5, I would think.
3/4 inch.
I'm 3/4. Sorry about that.
So the 1.5-inch meter would be for
Commercial, or it could be a HOA, irrigation, it could be a number of things.
And then for the inspection charges and the plan check fees, we did use an average rate. Staff is proposing to use actual costs incurred because it does fluctuate based on the need for the inspection and the plan check. But for the purpose of determining the fiscal impact, we did use the standard average across other agencies, which is 165 and 806, just for the purpose of calculating fiscal impact. But as we gather more data on these inspection fees and plan check fees throughout the year, we are going to be reevaluating that and probably bringing them back in the future. On the report as well, we propose to delete remove about 6 fees that we no longer going to be charging. On the flip side, we added they proposed about 11, but we're only implementing about 9 of them, of the proposed fees. So this slide right here kind of provides a snapshot of the fiscal impact based on a 3-year average revenue. Again, these ones are just a selected few. There are some fees that I'm not able to do a full fiscal impact analysis because we're not breaking it down at that level, when we're recording or we're tracking it. So on average, the 3 years, we are estimating about close to $900,000 in estimated additional revenue that will then relieve some of that rate pressure. Because it will be, less money would be applied to the non-rate revenues. And it's broken down by fund in this example. This slide right here, again, the report itself actually has multiple comparisons against other agencies throughout the report, but this one is, again, it just shows one example on the presentation that shows that the proposed fees are within the range of other agencies. And part of this is I wanted to kind of note that the comparable agencies that we selected were not closely not within the surrounding areas, because we had to select agencies that have comparable size to us in terms of population, customer base, and level of workforce. So there might be some agencies in there that are not on our neighboring agencies. But a little bit more detail is on the report itself. Again, this is just one example of those comparisons. And then finally, of course, we recommend the fees to be effective September 1st this fiscal year. Again, thank you for Ms. Gretchen Gutierrez and the VBA. They worked closely with us. We reviewed the fees with them thoroughly, line by line, and they were able to provide us a letter of support for this proposed fees. And one of the things that we're planning on doing that I've put in here is one of the plans is to actually come up with a cost recovery policy, hopefully by the end of this fiscal year. And the purpose of that is to allow us to narrow the gap between what the proposed fees would be in the cost in the future versus what we're charging. We're going to be coming up, we could be using economic factors and other indexes to come up with an annual either increase, or it will allow us to have a review each year. So that by the time, it's covered in between years. So by the time we do again come back in about 3 to 5 years to do a formal cost allocation plan, the gap between the fees are going to be not so significant. So that kind of wraps up the presentation, and I'm available for questions. And
Well, I mean, my eye kind of caught on, thank you for the presentation, Carrie, on this slide on in the study report, page 28. It says new service and meter installations for 3/4 and 1-inch direct read meters. And it looks like everyone's pretty close to the average line of about $2,300. And our current fee there is over $4,000, and they're saying we should go to $4,500. And we're almost double the average of everybody else, and going up. So, imagine the study doesn't do this, but are we planning to look at why our cost to do this is so much higher than everybody else?
that's something that we're considering as well. I think we did do a thorough review of the process. There might be some differences on the type of service depending on the areas as well. But again, that's a consistent thing that we're going to be looking at each year.
I think as Ms. Gutierrez pointed out, engineering also has a study going on for developer impact fees, and I'll have to confirm that the meter charges are going to be looked at the same time the capacity charges are looked at. I don't know whether Dan's shaking his head vertically, so I guess I'll take that as affirmation that they will be looked at.
Well, and the report kind of discussed how people put things in different buckets. I mean, if our new service and meter installation is double everyone else, do we have something else that's lower than everyone else that's in a similar bucket but just different, that I couldn't find it in this report, honestly, but maybe there's a non-overhead item that is lower that wouldn't have been in this report. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as of this time, these are it would be based on time estimates that was provided to us and the fully burdened rate for each of the positions that are performing these services, and this is the rate that that had come up.
No, I understand. It's just double everybody else, that's all.
And doesn't everybody have to have a 1-inch because of the fire suppression?
Yes.
No, that is an argument that is being made by some in the development community based on fire marshal regulations. It has to do more with where they are in our system and where they are relative to the pressure zones. It's not everybody. Typically, we're still installing 3/4-inch meters. There are folks that are pushing back against the 1-inch surcharge, and they're saying that they shouldn't be required to pay the extra if the only reason is because of the fire protection. And we're basically taking the position, well, if you don't pay for it, who is paying for it? Because under 218, if you're required to have a 1-inch meter, then that's what you're required to pay for. We can't subsidize that under 218 right now. So, I mean, I think we're still looking at that. We've heard this argument. We've asked for information to do our own analysis of that complaint, and we've never received anything as far as I know. All it's been is comments during hearings without the ability to actually do any review ourselves.
So why didn't the consultant look at that?
Well, again, I think it's going to be something that's taken up under the engineering study. There is some overlap here, and perhaps we could have been a little bit more precise in who and in how these folks analyze charges, recognizing that, again, most of the concern that comes to us is based on those development impact fees, not necessarily on the charges that are in this study. And again, the idea is that development wants to keep the costs as low as possible so that they can then maximize their profit incentive on each property that's turned over.
Kerry, I have a question. Do these fees include some kind of assumption for inflation over, you mentioned a 3 to 5 year window to do the next study potentially. So are we somehow capturing escalation in personnel costs and operating costs that might be occurring in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, this one right here actually is based on the budgeted item because we started this study back in 2019. So it's based on budgeted dollars in 18 and 19. So they did put some inflations on it for this particular one. But again, we're going to have to review it each year to kind of compare it against our index. And again, we're part of the cost recovery plan that we're doing is we're looking into what appropriate index would be used, whether it's an economic indicator such as CPI, or maybe we use budgeted dollars every year when we budget for operating expense, what the differences are. So it's going to be dependent on the type of fees. And that's all going to be laid out on a cost recovery plan that we're hoping to bring back before the end of the fiscal year.
Jim, you know, that comment that you just made about how builders just want to maximize their profits, I think that it's more about that builders, you know, you can't build anything unless there's an incentive of 10%. And, you know, if there's not that there, then you have to raise the cost of those that you're building for people to buy. So we want to have affordable housing, and we want to have houses that people can afford here in the desert. And so that's why. It's not because they want to make more money. I think it's that the price point has to be a certain percentage. So, I mean, we all have to keep that in mind.
I understand it's a very competitive market out there, and part of the cost is driven by the price of the bare dirt real estate. And so, again, it's location, location, location. We are finding that in the East Valley, where we don't have a lot of infrastructure, where there is a great deal of concern about affordable housing, there aren't a lot of folks out there doing development. Most of the development is taking place in the more built-up areas as infill projects. We do have some new projects going up over by Sunnylands. There's a large property that's going to be developed there in Rancho Mirage. We also have a large project going up in Palm Desert, University Park. You know, the cost of development is something that, you know, they watch very closely. And I think, you know, it's important for us to have a consistent approach to what our impact fees are so that we level that playing field. And we're not doing case-by-case analysis on this because that gets us into trouble.
It's just, you know, it's not a big deal when you're building $1 million homes, but when you're building, you know, $250,000 homes in certain areas, these fees do make a difference. So that's the big difference.
So can you put that page 30 28 of the study report. Can we put that up on the screen? And just another question here. I know that, right. I know that this study was using, I guess, these folks published their rates. But why didn't we look at our local, I mean, we have Indio and Coachella putting in meters too. I'm sure they have charges for that. Why didn't we look at, why isn't that in here?
Well, we selected comparable agencies in terms of our size and our population, because we do have some additional costs that may not be similar to Indio. So the agencies that were selected were based on our cost size, our factors, our population, our size of our employees. That's where we kind of went to and compared it against.
Thank you.
There it is.
We are a unique district because we're the only district that provide
That's not it.
other services
Two more.
besides water and wastewater services.
There you go. Okay. Sorry, Carrie.
That's okay.
Getting the page up there. Yeah, I know. I mean, it would be useful. I know DVBA puts out a report that they charge dearly for because it's so valuable. That does have that information in it.
President Powell,
Yeah. Go ahead, Director.
I just wanted to point out just one more difference to just share some information because of your question. And I just wanted to say that I don't know about Indio, but I know that the city of Coachella doesn't install the service lines and meters. They basically put that responsibility on the contractor, and it just gets inspected like other work would be inspected, where I think in the district's case, the installation is performed by staff. So that's a little bit of a difference, I think.
Right, and I think that's because CVWD has this longstanding practice of not allowing anybody but our own in-house workers to really touch the distribution system. It's different on sanitation. Sanitation, we will, I guess, certify contractors to work on the sewer systems. But for domestic, it's only our people, and that's a public safety, public health issue. From our perspective, I mean, clearly there are other ways different agencies do it, but that has been a longstanding practice here for CVWD.
So
and that might be, John, that might be something to think about. I think that's one of the key differences is whether we continue a policy, but it'd be good to get a sense of, would it be cheaper if a contractor did it, and would we be able to put in place all the checks and balances that would make us comfortable? Could we create a pre-approved contractors list, like it sounds like we have for sanitation? Maybe it's a little bit more strict, being that it deals with domestic and not sanitation. But is that doable? And is it, are the costs significant? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know. But it does seem like that's a difference, at least as you mentioned about comparing CVWD maybe with the city of Indio and the city of Coachella.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but thank you for that. I mean, I think that's worth looking at. I mean, to me, I'd look at this. If this were my own business, I'd be saying, why does it cost us twice as much as everybody else to do the same thing? And maybe it's not the same thing, but I mean, these guys are all right on the average line, except for the city of Riverside, which is lower. And they're comparable districts, right? I mean, Eastern Municipal and Irvine Ranch are the two we always compare ourselves to more than anybody. And they're right there at 2,200, and here we are at 4,500. It just seems like there's something wrong. I mean, it raises, for me, it's like a red flag. It's like, so what's going on here? And I know some of the other fees were
John,
lower.
this is Peter.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, so I was just looking at the city of Indio on the website, and it's interesting because they have water meter fees at $292, but then they also have developmental fees, which are different. So to the point that someone made earlier is that maybe our fees are including some things that other districts are not, and I'm not quite sure if it's apples to apples here. But I completely agree that looking at this page 28, that this fee seems to be out of line with other districts. So my question to the staff would be: is this purely the meter, the cost of the meter and the installation? Is that all that is included in this cost?
Yes, it is. I actually have, is it Courtney or Kushbu, are you on the line?
Yeah, this is Kushbu. I'm on the line.
The impact fee is like another additional 4,000, I think.
I believe it is, I was just double checking that right now. It is, yeah, I believe it's the cost of the meter plus the staff time to install it.
And I know we have a fee for just the meter itself, so you can figure that out and back that out. I believe.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can find that, but all right. Well,
I just wanted to add one thing: is there is, I think the vast variance is that I think it includes quite a significant administrative cost along with their existing actual costs, and I don't know that other agencies are doing that. So I think that $4,500 includes an administrative burden, which represents the cost of everybody that isn't in operations, administration, finance, and all those externals. And I think that fee is in the range of 35%.
Yes, based on the cost allocation plan, the composite overhead allocation is about 37.2%. That was what we presented back in 2019.
Which is a $1,600 burden on
yeah,
top
that's part
of
of
the
it.
existing fee.
So you knocked out a third of the difference. Yeah, appreciate that. And I don't know that these other people, I mean, I imagine they have an overhead charge too. They should. All right, well, I'll point it out. I mean, it concerns me. I think we've seen this before too, so there you go. It probably shows up in the DVBA's report too, because you put everything together. They take a cut at it the different direction, and you can see, if I'm going to build a house in this jurisdiction versus that jurisdiction, what are the total fees? And I'm not sure how this fits in there. I haven't seen the latest report, although I would like to. I should request a copy. Anyways, that's my comment. Any others before we go to public?
So what happens if we don't approve this?
I mean, there are a lot of other sections in here that don't seem to be gaining quite as much attention. And if the board only has a problem with that section 6 item, I think we could probably bring that back under the engineering study, which I think we've already said we were going to do.
Well, what about 5?
And so actually, I do want to add, I do have a separate material cost and the labor component on it that we could provide after.
Yeah, I saw it somewhere. I mean, the meter itself's only like $700 or something like that,
Well,
right?
it depends, because there's some that are actually, for example, for a 1.5 to 2 inch meter, the material cost for that is about $2,600. And with the labor cost, the cost per unit of about $3,900. So
Yeah,
that kind of averages.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but what we're talking about is a 3/4 and 1 inch meter, so it's going to be less.
Yeah, the 3/4 is about $785.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Carrie, if we adopt, if we don't adopt this and we,
That
sorry.
sounds very expensive for a 3/4 inch meter.
I'm sorry, Director Strada.
I think,
Director Aguilar was making a comment. I think maybe you couldn't hear him, but go ahead, Director Aguilar.
Thank you.
I couldn't.
If we don't accept this particular item and the recommendation on the fee, and we adopt some other number related to this fee, would we not then be basically having to subsidize the operating cost for implementation of this fee?
That's correct. So any cost that's not recovered, we will have to fund it through non-rate revenues. I'm sorry, is that the question? Yes, it
Yeah,
will be
okay,
subsidized.
thank you. I just want to make that
Non-rate
point.
revenues then again in turn puts pressure on your rates because we're taking more of that non-rate revenue availability to pay for the cost that's not being covered by these fees.
But there are other districts that aren't putting in the whole kitchen sink into this, right? I mean, they're not putting their, there's 1/3 that's an administrative that we heard. And that administrative gets kind of spread out over lots of different things. So
that's
Yeah.
based on, the 37% is across, any services that we provide. That's about the administrative fee, the overhead allocation that's put in, whether it's finance, human resources, administrative, billing, that we can't like direct charge directly to each one. So it's spread across all our fees.
Yeah.
And all across the rate
Yeah,
rates as well.
and on that, I mean, it tends to be a pretty big number. The 2019 cost allocation plan that you included, I'm sure we saw it. I don't know that I looked at it all that closely before, but it's a little odd because one category of facilities maintenance is more than half of the total of that whole thing. So you have all these different categories, general manager, board, blah, 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 things that you can't, that are overhead type things. But then facilities maintenance is $26 million out of that, which is around half, a little over half of the total. And I mean, is that just on facilities that are considered general district facilities? Because that's a big number.
Khushbu, do you want to address that question?
Sure, I can answer it. Yeah, so that number is inclusive of all facility maintenance for all of the different infrastructure that the district has to maintain. And then it gets allocated out based upon what type of facility maintenance is being provided. So whether it's electrical support, custodial support, mechanical support, and it gets allocated to those different funds to ensure that we're accurately capturing the overhead to those funds.
No, I get it. Well, why don't those charges, I mean, if you're working on the canal, for instance, why don't you just bill it directly to the canal, And I don't understand that. Why does it get billed to an overhead account and then allocated out?
For the most part, staff is charging directly. If they're working on a particular area, they do charge directly to those funds. But then there's still those one-offs that, you're providing a service through, that's district-wide, so they can't specifically charge it. Those are the ones that goes into the overhead plan.
Okay. Seems like that's an awfully large, I mean, that's a huge part of our operating budget, 26 million.
Yeah. And that's part of it, like, we're doing some changes on how we budget stuff. And so in the future years and in the current year. So that's sort of areas that we're going to keep on looking at and reviewing on an annual basis. We've done some changes in this fiscal year 22 budget where we're actually also doing the offsets, the offsets for cost. So as we continue to kind of review, as we review the rates as well, we're being more cognizant about, making sure that we apply it to the right funds.
Okay. All right. Any others? Director Estrada, I think you had something.
Yeah, I'll be. I thought about making this comment, and I'm doing it because I think I made it at the last meeting we had. I think staff brought it for a presentation for the first time, and then I know that Director Aguilar and myself have seen it before then, and I didn't have many questions, but there was one thing that kind of stood out to me, and I just wanted to get a better sense of what the driver was to a difference that I see between the call out, if you want to call it that, to turn on a meter, let's say, for irrigation, for canal service, and then turn off, turn on, associated with the domestic system. And it seemed to me that the charge on the domestic was was a lot higher than Canal. And I'm just looking for an answer because I don't think I've received an answer that's made sense to me. So I'm still unsure what the driver is. I understand that there's, different overhead costs associated perhaps with the different departments and different salary schedules, et cetera. But I haven't heard any of that. I haven't really heard, well, it's this or it's that. And that was something that kind of stood out to me. And then on that same token, if we're not, if I don't feel comfortable with, let's say that I don't feel like I've received an answer, then maybe I don't want to vote an approval for this as well. So, I mean, if staff has an answer for a quick answer to give us, I'd like to hear it. Again, I think I've asked it at least 3 times, the last 3 times that I've reviewed this. And I'm not quite convinced that I've heard an answer.
For the canal charges, Director Estrada, we did pull that out because that was included in the cost of service study, and we did have the same computation. It was the canal charges, gate charges were included in the cost of service for canal. And so it was not actually part of this. Initially, it was included in here because we did do an initial calculation, and then we realized that the Carollo actually included it in their study, and so we decided to pull it out of this section. And I apologized. I thought I included it on the email response to you and Mr. Aguilar back in June, and I apologize if it wasn't clear enough at that time.
So one quick question: do we have? I think you mentioned the gate charges, but is there something else that we attribute to turning off meters, turning on meters, adjusting meters? Is that called something else, or is that also called a gate charge?
May I defer to Dan to answer that?
Pretty much just the gate charges.
Sorry. It's just a.
So we don't have a charge, or we don't have a name for turning on a canal meter, or when we go out there to turn it on, when we go out there to adjust it, when we go out there to turn it off. We don't have a name for that. We don't have a line item for that.
So if a customer does a regular order, then there is it's accepted that it's part of the run. But if there's a specific item that somebody has called out from another run and or a different area in the run and or a night Zanjero and or in the office, then we charge actual cost to go out. We did a determination and provided that to Carrie on what the actual costs were to get into a vehicle, the cost of the vehicle, the labor involved to get out to a average area in the irrigation system, which is further out from even Coachella office. And we feel that those are actual costs based on their actual costs to do the service, to provide the service for the fees.
So are you saying that when you say it's part of the run, are you saying that the costs associated with turning on orders, adjusting orders, turning off orders is all captured by our operations, by our salaries, by our overhead, by the fact that someone orders water and we charge a amount per acre foot? You're saying it's captured somewhere in there?
Yeah, the cost of a typical water order is captured elsewhere. The actual cost for an unscheduled and or a scheduled is over and above. Obviously, unscheduled is exactly that, is the fact that it wasn't organized and it wasn't in a specific order, and a unusual run was required to go out and turn on the meter specifically as a result of the unscheduled nature of the customer calling. And we actually provided actual costs based on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other board questions or comments before we move into the public hearing?
So are we also voting to mandate that our policy is a 80% cost recovery for everything? Is that a new policy?
80%?
Yeah,
That's not
we're
what I'm
asking for a full,
100%.
100% full cost recovery is what we're recommending.
Could I just follow up to that, please? I just want to reiterate some of the points that have already been made, that our operation is unique in that we are a series of enterprise funds. When we talk about what these comparisons to other entities, it may be that they have a greater amount of flexibility to subsidize their enterprise operations with other sources. This study did not analyze that, did not look at what are all these other entities' other capabilities. So we're focused on our own. We're telling you that it's very clear that to whatever extent we do not adopt full 100% recovery, it's putting stress on our non-rate revenues and potentially our other rates. So for the years that we've gone without having the update, we've been under that pressure without even it being evident. What these other entities have done regarding their own rate studies, we don't know the quality of those studies. And so we don't know if they've fully captured all of their costs. What we do know is we spent a lot of time on this study for us. And we believe that our numbers are accurate. And when we're saying this is what it costs to do this, we're really trying to be faithful to what the law requires, to not ever have a rate higher than what the cost is for those services. So if we don't do this now, we don't do it at full cost, it's just going to add pressure down the line.
Right. I mean, so looking at domestic, for instance, there's about $700,000 of revenue that will go to the domestic fund when these new rates are adopted on an annual basis.
On an annual basis, that's correct.
Right. So currently, it's possible that that reserves or rates are paying or covering that.
It's not possible, it is.
Yeah, it's got to be one of. It's got to be one of the other.
It's had to have been happening.
Yeah. Right.
So if everybody's averaging around 80 to 100%, which is typical, then we could go from 72 to 80.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rule is you can't go over. So you go as close to the numbers you can, and then you probably slip a little over time with inflation. I mean, I would guess that's probably what's happening is folks aren't adjusting.
That's part of it too, because it's been quite a while. It's been 8 years since the last we did a full study. So that's why we're hoping to come up with an annual cost recovery plan that would help us narrow that gap each year, as opposed to having this larger increase, because we have not changed the rates in quite a while.
So if we're saying full recovery will contribute $700,000 to domestic, and a recommendation is to go to 80% instead of 100%, then we're only getting $560,000 into domestic. So we're losing $140,000 that's going to have to be made up by the rates.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Which is possibly how these other guys are doing it.
Well, I mean, there's the discretionary 1% tax that we allocate out specifically through the board's discretionary action, where that money goes. You've got Eastern, which is a water and wastewater. You've got Irvine Ranch, which is just a water agency. So, 100% of their property tax can go directly to their domestic rate and underwrite it that way. We don't do that. We spread our property tax differently.
Yeah, it's possible.
But there's also some holes in this. There's some holes in this. That's what makes it uncomfortable in this study. And there's a few things that weren't studied, and so that's why I'm having some problems with it.
Yeah.
And then one option might be, in looking at this ordinance, there's a lot of fees. If there are particular fees to be pulled out and reviewed later, that's an option. Unless there's a concern with the way all of the fees were calculated. You could take out some of the fees, like the meter fee, and then proceed with the ordinance on the rest.
You know, to me, it's more, I feel like we're looking at a piece of the elephant here and you don't really know. And I mean, that's where I think like the DVBA's study it would be useful for me to see, because I want to know, where does this put us relative to the other folks that are providing similar services in our area? And it might be that we fit in pretty well to that. It really just depends on what their other, what the other piece of the elephant look like. And we're not looking at the whole thing right now. We're not looking at the developer impact fees.
I have a question. The budget that we just adopted recently, did it include the assumption that these fees were going to be increased?
It did not.
It did not include it, no.
That's a great question.
That would have been presumptive.
Sometimes we presume, sometimes we don't.
So as we're looking forward to the rate adoption for year 2, we've already started developing a list of positive and negative things from the assumptions that were embedded in the Corolla cost service study, so that we'll fully kind of true up where we're at. And we're going to be working with Corolla to validate all that information before we present to the board any year 2 rate increases, and 3 and 4 and 5. So obviously, if this is adopted in its fullest per the staff's recommendation, that's a $700,000 plus positive to the domestic fund.
So you wouldn't have to increase rates next year?
I did not say that. I said that's a positive factor. That's a positive factor.
It definitely would take a little bit of the pressure off. Yeah. All right. I mean, it's a lot of moving pieces. So any other board comments before we move to the public hearing?
Yeah, I have a question. When does that DBA study come out, John, or do we have
I think it's published.
Most recent copy of that? Can we get a copy of that?
Well, Gretchen will address that exact question when she comes up in a minute. Okay. So this is the time and place for a public hearing to receive testimony on the proposed changes and/or additions to the ordinance establishing a schedule of special charges for miscellaneous services. I hereby declare the public hearing open. Does anyone attending this public hearing wish to be heard? Please give your name, address, and limit your remark to 3 minutes.
Okay, for this one, I'm going to sit down. I think I might be here a while.
We've teed this up pretty well now.
Yeah, no kidding. Good morning again. Gretchen Gutierrez, CEO of Desert Valley Builders Association. First of all, let me address that, yes, our study is out. I will go to the office here shortly after this meeting. I'll bring you all back copies of it. We have hard copies available. I can send an electronic copy to Sylvia if she'd like, and she can distribute it that way to the appropriate staff. It is a proprietary study to us, so we do ask that you don't distribute this to the world. And our study does look a little differently. It doesn't look at just water fees and services. It cuts across all different kinds of levels of engineering, planning, building and safety at each of the 9 cities and the county of Riverside for a comparison. So the 9 cities are laid out side by side. Water is one of those elements that we do look at. And we look at it on a 35 units and a 60 unit tract basis. So we're trying to determine that if you were building 35 units in the city of Indio, this is what your per lot cost would be. If you were building the 35 units in Palm Springs, this is what your unit cost would be. So there is some comparison of apples to apples, and sometimes it's apples to kumquats. I mean, it's a little all over the map because everyone doesn't exactly have the same line items and the same inclusion in those line items of those fees. So to compare them side by side, even for CVWD to look at Indio or to look at Coachella, as you've heard, there's not necessarily always a direct correlation. So it's a little bit of an extrapolation and then a little bit of a crystal ball sometimes to have to get to it. But I'll be happy to make that study available to you all. We do it on a triannual basis, so we just finished it earlier this year. We've started distributing it out to everyone. And as I say, it's a pretty quick read, and you can see it. We do have an executive summary at the beginning, and it lays it out as to how the cities look at it. We look at it as which one of the cities is the most user-friendly to pull a permit in, and not necessarily the most user-friendly for a utility type of situation. So again, we look at it in a little bit different light and lens. That's number one. Number two, we've experienced a significantly crazy year, as is everyone else this last year due to COVID-19. And nobody realized we were going to sell houses in this last 16 months, which has been obscenely crazy for us. Unfortunately, it was also obscenely crazy within the labor and materials side of things. You've all seen the price of lumber went up over 400% in the last 16 months. It started to come down, but it's not exactly back to the 2018, 2019 levels. The other problem we're having is a supply issue at this point in time. We have developers that have sold houses that they can't start for a year and a half. They have them under contract, but they can't start because we can't get materials. So yes, you are seeing an escalation in pricing, but we're also seeing an escalation in supply and demand, an escalation in materials, and an escalation in our labor costs. So those margins are not going up as well for the development community to be making 200% income on a net of that house sale. So we're trying to keep up with the market. So to address the point of we're getting rich on it, we're really not getting rich on it, okay? Yes, the margins have increased a little bit for some, but for others, not so much. And that's a nationwide shortage, by the way, folks. That's not just here in the Coachella Valley. That's nationwide. The other problem we have is we're not building affordable. To Director Bianco's point, we're not building a $250,000 house in the Coachella Valley. We're not building it in the state of California, quite honestly. Median price in the state of California is over $700,000 right at the moment. I certainly can't afford it. I don't know how many people could afford it at that price point. So we're always looking at the cost of what the development community is paying in order to come into the community and provide services and bring new housing. Yes, we have looked at this study I'm bringing it back here. Yes, we've looked at this study very closely, but to staff's point, you haven't looked at anything since 2012. And unfortunately, when you have a 9-year gap, you have sticker shock when you're looking at it. We don't necessarily say, yes, we want you to have 100% recovery, but we certainly also don't want you to be shorting yourself on the services and the availability that you have to provide those services. And yes, it is a major enterprise that you have going on here in terms of getting that service delivered to the consumer, whether it's the residential consumer, commercial, agriculture, what have you. It's a moving target all of the time to get those things done and put them out there. We're happy to provide our analysis to you all for this at this point in time. I've been corresponding with some of our engineers while I've been sitting here as to the difference between a 3/4 meter and a 1-inch meter and a 1.5-inch meter and what their feelings were on it as far as what we're seeing from the cost of them putting it into those homes. To Mr. Barrett's point, yes, we have a case-by-case basis going for 3/4 inch versus 1 inch. The folks are thinking, if we have to put in 1 inch because it's mandated, we'll put it in. We're not happy about it because the problem with it is it's operating under what we view as some flawed philosophies from the fire department, not from the water agencies, but from the fire department's perspective, that having them in the homes with full fire suppression in a home is going to save the home in the event of a fire. Unfortunately, water does as much damage, if not more, than fire does in a residence when there's an actual fire. So there's some push and pull, and that's been that way for the last 10 plus years in dealing with the fire community. We obviously want to make sure that we continue to keep loss of life at a minimum or nothing, as well as loss of residential or commercial properties when it comes to fire. All that being said, you all do need to look at these things on a regular basis, all right? It's something we talk to the cities about and other agencies about. You don't go 9, 10, 15 years before you look at what the cost of doing business is or what the cost of services are. Nobody likes to pay more fees. We don't like to pay it. You don't like to pay it. Nobody likes to pay more for charges. I don't like going to the gas station and paying $4 a gallon for gas right at the moment. I'm not thrilled with the state of California at this point, but I'm paying it because I need to put gas in the car. And utility services and water service is one of those things that we need to be able to provide to all of our consumers, to all of our residents, to folks that are using it. It is a health and public safety issue, and we want to make sure that everyone has good, clean drinking water and water for their needs that they need to have it for. I don't know that I've addressed everything that you all brought up because it was a little bit spitballing. I would say that yes, you can take it to your legal counsel's point. Yes, you can take segments out, and we'll be happy to come back in a couple weeks even and look at this again. Nobody says you have to wait 6 months to come back and bring it back to you all for a vote on adoption or continue to tweak it. We're going to work with engineering on the things here for the meter charges on that 1-inch meter issue on their study as it is. But, and also to the point, you don't have to take a full 100% cost recovery. Just know that you're going to have that cost for services be picked up by other departments, whether it's on your rates or through discretionary funds or some other means and stuff. So it's a balancing act. We recognize it's a balancing act. And we certainly hope that you'll make the appropriate decision going forward. So thank you. If you got a question, ask it now.
So if you were sitting up here, would you vote for this? Yes.
If I was sitting up there, vote for no. You know what? Oh boy, that's a loaded question. Thanks for putting me on.
Remember the letter you sent
You know
us.
what? I'm going to hear about it from my constituency on the other side. So you know what? I would say, and here's the thing: when we've dealt, I'm going to caveat it with a qualified answer. When we have done this with agencies that have not done an increase in a significant period of time, we request that they implement it in a staged-in fashion to get them to the 100% recovery, but not doing it all in one fell swoop, that they would take it in a year or a year and a half or 2 years and step it in, basically. We've had several cities out here that hadn't done an increase in their fees in almost 18 years at one point. They've now gone back and they look at it on an annualized basis and they tie it to the CPI. So once a year, they don't do a full study, but once a year they go back and review everything. They do a review internally within the staff, the finance department, et cetera, and they go with a consultant and they go back and they say, look, let's look at this and realize what our escalation has been in the last year. We're now at this level, where do we need to be? Let's tie it to, and they've tied it to their CPI index. So, which this year, by the way, was 5.26. So it was quite high this year. And that's what they've done. They've just, they're just adopting it. Yeah. Yeah.
This month, June.
Yeah, which is kind of an unusual, but normally it's down in the 3s and sometimes much lower than that. So this time around it was high. By the way, we're under a new indexing. Riverside County now has its own indexing. We're no longer lumped into Los Angeles and Long Beach anymore. We now have our own little basis points.
But Gretchen, just to confirm, we have a letter of support from you
You
for
do.
these fees.
You do,
right?
yes, because you know what, you do need to collect them, okay, and we recognize that, and we're not arguing that, but as you noticed, and as I referenced earlier, we're asking, let's have further review on that meter cost, because that's a significant cost to us, because we're having to put in a system that we feel is over-engineered based on what the fire department's asking for, not what the utility district is asking for, not what you all are asking for, but what the fire department is asking for. And, whether it's
But that's going to be in the other
appropriate or
study,
not.
right?
So let's have an argument about fire.
That's in the other study.
And that's in the
we're
other
doing.
study that we're going to work
That's
with
not
Dan on
this.
that one. Yeah.
I'll tell you what I heard I serve on the DVBA board, and what I heard was a tremendous amount of frustration from builders who need something and they can't get it.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't so much you're raising your fee by 1% or whatever. It was that I need my power meter and I can't from IID and I can't get one. That's what you, right? I mean, so if we're gonna say you need to pay this fee, at least we need to be ready to provide the service so that we don't impede the progress.
Yeah, and I would agree completely with President Powell on that. Our folks are time driven at this point, and especially when it comes to meters being installed out there on the projects at this point, they're ready with the buyer ready to go in, whether it's a homeowner or whether it's a commercial site and stuff. They don't want to have to wait 30, 60 days to get that meter set and.
But they don't wait 30, 60,
I'm not
90
saying they
days
do.
for water.
I'm not saying they
We're
do.
talking
Okay, but
power.
I'm not
we're
saying
limited,
they do.
okay,
I'm not
just
saying they
power
do.
here.
I didn't
not sure
say
why
that.
we'd be bringing IID into this discussion.
I'm
but-
not saying,
I
no,
brought it-
I didn't bring him.
I brought it up because
brought it up.
my point is that if you're going to charge the fee, at least be there to provide the service.
And I think to his point, and this is where I was
think
going
we
with
are
it.
too.
His point is, if you are charging a fee, the customer service end of it is where we really want to see it being appropriately applied to it. So, and that's at any district, at any utility, and at any city agency. It's the same thing. We have this conversation across the board at all of the agencies. Is if we're paying for something, we want the service and we'd like it in a timely manner and efficient manner. And that's what we're saying. So he brought it up, not me.
I brought it up because my point was more to address the sensitivity of is it price or is it service? And I think
And in our case, it's service.
It's service.
It truly is service. It truly is service. And that's, and to his point, yes, it is this district, meaning our office, doesn't hear some of the issues that we hear from other agencies, about other agencies and stuff. So we will hear it about, segments or occasionally something dealing with a one-on-one situation or a processing situation or an individual developer issue. But across the board, we're not hearing that there's an overwhelming systemic issue that they're dealing with here. But again, if you are going to raise rates, everybody's going to say, great, what do I get for my return on that investment? So
Okay.
that's where we are.
thank you very much. And thank you for your support.
Almost as good as a yes, I'd vote on it.
Yeah, I think you were smart not answering that question directly. Good.
That's what I heard her say. I mean,
Yeah. So do we have any other members of the public wishing to comment at this time? No?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to online next.
I don't know.
I thought we were still in room. No, we do not have any participants online, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, would the board entertain a phased-in approach of 80, 90, 100 over 3 years?
It'll impact.
Yes, I would.
President Powell, before you go to a decision, could I ask if we could go back to the presentation, slide 10? I want to make one point that wasn't mentioned before. And we were talking about domestic. We're also on this agenda, you're getting ready to approve an agreement for a consultant for a sanitation cost of service study. And so number 2 on the impact list here is the sanitation fund, which would have a $156,000 positive. If approved in full, that's the information that would be provided along with the budget information in the 5-year CIP for that fund. If not, then we'd recast this number.
Okay. Well, we'll see then. I guess what we could do is you could even approve, for simplicity's sake, you could do a stepped up on the domestic charges, but I mean, I don't even know, are they siloed like that? Maybe they're not. Maybe some of these charges cover more than one. A single charge could cover more than one.
Well, they're all itemized in the ordinance, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the ordinance, there is a table.
There's a separate 4-page table.
Right, a schedule for.
Yeah, but
special charges.
is there any? I'm okay with stepping it up too. I don't know that there's that much of a need to do that, but it's not going to have that big an impact either way. Maybe a little harder to administer.
Unless we could do like certain selections to have 100%, and maybe, for example, if it's the meter that's a concern, we can either have that as a phased-in, which is like the bigger chunk, and because some of the fees are, our lab fees. I mean, they're kind of minor. We need to kind of really charge what we're doing with that. Also, with developmental reviews, the fluctuations of those are not
Yeah, I get it.
So maybe we can do it in sections. If the meter installation is the main primary concern, we could either review that as part of the ongoing study or And we can do full cost recovery for all the other fees, if that's acceptable.
That may work. All right, so we're still going through public comment here. Do we have any written communications?
Mr. President, the only written communication received was the letter from DVBA that was included in the packet.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you. Council Frey, will you please comment on the public hearing?
This public hearing was duly noticed and conducted. The board has given the public the right to be heard, and the board can now proceed in making its decision on adopting a new ordinance establishing a schedule of special charges for miscellaneous services.
Thank you. There being no further input, I hereby declare the public hearing closed. The board will now take up discussion and consideration on the proposed changes and/or additions to the ordinance establishing a schedule of special charges for miscellaneous services. And I'll just comment, like on that slide we had up there for a while, I don't know that stepping it up for that domestic meter charge is going to really make much difference, because the proposed increase was pretty small. The current charge is almost double what the other folks are charging, and the proposed new charge is almost the same. So going in 3 steps isn't going to really do much for anybody. You know what I mean? I mean, it's very small. I don't know how small.
More from a practical point of view, it seems to me if you focused on that 4-page handout, and if there was individual items there that were a concern to you at full cost recovery, maybe identify certain fees to do in a staggered approach.
So there is meter fees that are going up from 4,000 to 4,500?
Well, it's more, no, it's not even that much. It's from about almost 4,300 to 4,500. It's about a $200 increase, which is only 5%. So you do 1.5% a year for 3. I mean, it just doesn't seem to really.
It's going to cost more money in paperwork.
Yeah.
That's on page 3 of that handout.
The ordinance.
Okay. But this new proposal will say that every year we will be at 100%. Is that what this is saying too?
No, what this is saying, we're asking the board to adjust the rates to what's published here. What Carrie was saying at the beginning of her presentation is we want to come back to you with a policy that would include a CPI type element so that every year we could present to the board recommendations for COLA-like increases. So
and then we'd still at the 5-year intervals do a study to true things up.
We would, but I was one of those cities that Ms. Gutierrez was referring to when I was in Palm Springs. It had been 12 years since we'd had our study done, and that was part of the angst that the current council was faced with 12 years of indecision or lack of information, because we started our study at the beginning of the Great Recession. And I think we may be in that same circumstance here, where most agencies are going to be reticent to be bringing back any kind of increases, whether they know about them or not, for concerns. It's all about the economy. We are unique in that we'd started ours before the pandemic and we finished it more recently. And we're asking you to adopt these increases.
I just want to be clear on something. That this policy is not like we have on a reserve where we have to have this amount.
We're not discussing a policy. We're discussing
rates.
Just rates.
Yeah. That's the policy is going to be brought back. I'm going to be bringing back a policy plan before the end of the fiscal year. And that one, we're going to go through and make sure that we have the right indexes and, appropriate.
Yeah, that policy discussion, it could have significant ramifications on other funds. If we're talking about an across-the-board policy change. So I'm not opposed to having that conversation, but I don't think it really relates to the approval of this item today. I support it, and I would, when the public hearing is closed.
We're going to close it right now. And then you could almost just continue that sentence.
All right, well, then
There being no further input, I hereby declare the public hearing closed. The board will now take up discussion and consideration of the proposed changes and additions to the ordinance establishing a schedule of special charges for miscellaneous services. And I think we've discussed it to death. So is there a motion to
Mr.
adopt?
President, if I may, I would make a motion to approve item 8B regarding the ordinance establishing the special charges.
Thank you.
And just for the note, it'll be ordinance number 1403.3.
Right.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Is there a second? I'll second that. I'm a little worried we may not get a vote here. So we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 1403.3. And any other discussion before we go to a vote? Let's do a roll call vote then.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That passed 5-0.
Thank you.
Felt closer than it was.
Mr. Powell,
Right.
are we going to go to meetings?
Yeah, we can do that. So in the interest of time, we're going to lose Director Estrada in not too long. And we have a number of meetings, so I wanted to skip ahead to
11B.
items 11B, little I through, we'll just do all of them because all but 2 of them involve Director Estrada. So why don't you just go ahead and take the floor, Director Estrada, and move on through those meetings.
Okay, thank you. And just for transparency, I do apologize for having to step out. I have to attend a mass service. My wife's grandma passed away, so I have to be at mass.
Yeah.
With that, I'll start with the June 7th. That was part of the work that we've been doing and trying to really hone in on a what we're calling the preferred alternative, which is eventually going to be the project that is funded through the Prop 68 monies that we received to develop the North Lake project at the Salton Sea. So as we continue to try to look at different alternatives, we kind of agreed on one. And so that was a conversation that we had between the county, the Salton Sea Authority, and some of us here at CVWD. And then that same day, that was a meeting that I had with staff, with the general manager, Jim Barrett. There was a request from the state of California, the State Water Resource Control Board, to try to get an update on the Oasis situation, the Oasis Mobile Home Park, and work to have them put some funding aside in the case that funding would be needed to provide emergency water, whether it was, which could be used to fund the water tender service that we have out there now, or whether we decide to contract that out. The money, they kind of wanted to get in front of it and start setting the pot of money aside so that in the case that it was needed, it could be used and not have to do that and kind of rush to establish a fund when we have an emergency on our hands. So that was the beginning of that conversation. And I think that the money has been approved, if I'm not mistaken. So then after that, I don't believe I was able to attend the June 9th meeting. So those 2 June 9th meetings you can remove. The June 10th meeting was a meeting that I also had with staff, with engineering, with their general manager, and the County of Riverside, primarily their housing folks. And I think that the effort there is that both our agencies are aligned, as we know that there's more water, sewer infrastructure kind of moving in that direction. And I think the county wants to get a sense of where our infrastructure is landing, so that to see what benefits it might give some of the projects that they're aware about. And I think vice versa, we kind of want to get a sense of what they're planning for. So that was some of that. And then on the June 11th meeting, that was a follow-up meeting to the June 7th meeting, which included the state of California. So the June 7th meeting was more of the internal conversation between the SSA and some of the member agencies to really agree on what our preferred alternative was going to be to the state. And then on that June 11th meeting is when we conveyed that message to the state and said, this is the alternative that we kind of want to focus on. And then on the 23rd, I'm sure maybe Director Bianco already talked about this one, but that was a meeting we had with Palm Desert. And what I recall from that meeting was kind of talking about their plans for the campus there in Palm Desert. And that kind of seemed to be one of the biggest projects. And then we did the whole thing where we go over some of the how many meters have been installed, some of the water usage in the district, et cetera. And then on the 24th, that was our general Salton Sea Authority meeting. There was a new installation of officers, and Supervisor Perez is going to be the incoming chairman, and Supervisor Blancarte from Imperial County is going to be the new vice chairman. And then on the 25th, that's a meeting that I had with our executive director to just get updates on some of the ongoing projects and asks, whether they be at the state or at the federal level. One thing that I've been working on is trying to really get a plan put together so that the Salton Sea Authority could be in a position to access some of those farm bill monies. So, just updates on that. And then on the July 14th meeting, I was not able to attend that meeting as well, due to kind of being out of town. And then on the 16th, I had an interview with Telemundo, where we talked about the announcement of the $7 million that were appropriated through the state budget to go towards the construction of the Avenue 66 mainline project, and a little bit about some of our efforts in trying to secure additional funding through the federal side and the work that we've been doing with Congressman Raul Ruiz, the ask that we have with Senator Feinstein and Senator Padilla. So that was kind of touching on that. And then on the 19th, I was on a mediation session with Director Powell and staff from both our agency and the Agua Caliente, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. And then on the 20th, we had our I think we have this bi-monthly meeting now, where we used to have it for about 5 years on a monthly basis, but we've moved them to bi-monthly meetings, and where we talk about all the projects that we're working on in the east side related to consolidation, both on the sewer side and the water side. and it was our first meeting in person since about a year ago or more. And so we were happy to connect again in person and kind of share a lot of the good news that we've been receiving over the past few weeks related to securing additional monies for the projects that we've identified. And that's, oh, and I got one more. And the July 23rd meeting was a joint meeting with President Powell, our staff, and the city of Coachella and their staff. And I think we talked about a few things, and I think it was good to connect with them. And that's it for me.
Thank you. You know, before we finish the meetings, I always want to go back. I think we've had, Director Bianco, I don't know that you've reported on the June 23rd and 24th meetings. I think, were you gone? You missed the last meeting, right? So.
Well, they just, I mean, Director Estrada just reported on them.
Yeah, so you were in attendance.
Yes, I was there.
At the Palm Desert and also Salton Sea Authority.
Yes.
Yeah, got those. And then on July 14th, we had Colorado River Board and 6 agency. I'm listed on the 14th for the Colorado River Board, but that wasn't me. I'm guessing Director Nelson was there since he chairs that. But I want to make sure we pick up the reports on behalf of Director Nelson for those 2 meetings. I had the DVBA board meeting on the 14th in person. I kind of commented on it earlier. I think that was maybe one of the more interesting points was that the supply chain is a bit of a mess. And so even though the housing market is coming back, hard to get people, hard to get power meters in the East Valley, prices going through the roof, et cetera. It's really delaying a lot of progress. And then also, as Director Estrada reported on July 20th, the Disadvantaged Communities meeting, we did that by Zoom and went through a number of the progress on a number of the projects and consolidations. Then Director Nelson, I have you on the 22nd, Colorado River Management Working Group.
Yeah, John, thank you. Yeah, on the 22nd, I did not attend that. I had a couple weeks out traveling for business, and then I was gone that particular week on vacation. I did attend. I didn't see my name on it, so I didn't really pull up my notes on it. But on the 14th, yes, I did attend the Colorado River Board of California. I chaired that meeting, and we again heard of the second worst runoff period into Lake Powell of recorded history. So that's definitely not good news. The Bureau of Reclamation is using some emergency powers to try and prop up levels of Lake Powell. They're releasing 200,000 acre feet of water out of Flaming Gorge Reservoir to put into Lake Powell. So that will be helpful. So the reclamation is taking some action there. And then we also heard from Rich Jurisic about some of the winter spikes that we've been seeing on a regular basis, and in a couple of other months in what might be causing those salinity spikes that occur downriver from Lake Powell. So they're still working on actual causes for those, but it was kind of interesting data. That was pretty much it, as I just recall off the top of my head.
All right, thank you. And just on the July 23rd, again, already reported by Director Estrada, but we did meet with the city of Coachella and went over a number of topics. Good topics.
Oh, John,
Yeah.
there was one other item from the Colorado River Board. We had a working group putting together California principles in terms of the 2026 renegotiations, and that was sent to the district, to Jim. Robert participated in that, as I did as well. Those are not negotiating terms, but just general principles that California agencies had met together and agreed upon.
Yeah, thank you. You know, and just I think the last one on this list, and then we'll go to others. July 19th, as mentioned earlier, I was on the Agua Caliente mediation with our team. And we've agreed to meet at least the principals only. Not sure exactly what form that's going to take, but I look forward to that. Any other meetings?
None for me.
Okay, is there a motion to approve per diem for the meetings reported on?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Roll call vote.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, and then just at the request of Director Estrada, again, we're going to jump to item 10E, which is the approval of the contract for the water service at Oasis Mobile Home Park. Dan Sharon.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
This recommendation is for the board to authorize the general manager to execute a contract services agreement with AC Water Service to provide temporary supplementary water to Oasis Mobile Home Park, subject to us being reimbursed by EPA, the owner, the state, or another entity. As you know, on March 23rd, the board approved additional requests to provide the temporary services internally by CPWD for up to 6 months. We are currently providing these services to Oasis Mobile Home Park 5 hours a day on site and 2 hours a day for preparation and travel. This request consists to enter the contract with AC Water Service to provide the same services. The contract would be structured so that it's a 3-month term with 7 additional 3-month term amendments potentially, and the ability to provide 2-week notice of termination should the funding entity cease any payments. One small clarification, we solicited proposals from 13 different vendors, and we received 2 proposals that were state certified. AC Water Service was the lowest provider in the amount of $95 an hour. The services include a 500-gallon water tank, an operator to be on site 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, including 2 hours of travel at a cost of $4,655, which is almost $1,000 more based on the same service. As far as fiscal impact, there would be no direct fiscal impact on CPWD as the funding is being paid by either the owner, EPA, the state, or another entity. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Yeah, this was done at my urging to staff. As you might imagine, I grow more and more concerned that there is no exit strategy here, and I'm concerned that we're tying up valuable district resources for basically a group of folks that need support and help but aren't our customers. I might also just point out that the map here is probably not entirely correct because the Oasis Mobile Home Park extends both sides of 70th Avenue. But I do also want to highlight that going to a contract service will cost the owner-operator or the Lawson heirs an extra $1,000 a week, which they may or may not be able or willing to pay. When we went into this discussion, we had EPA and the state water board on the phone, and we were pursuing the funds through the state to apply for this service, and so we didn't necessarily think it was going to be problematic. We've subsequently learned, though, that the state funds, when they do become available, are for contingency purposes only. Now, the Lawson heirs understand that there is money available, and they may not be able to continue with their cash collections out there, which will then cause us to exercise those funds. But in my mind, the best solution for us at this point is to at least consider having the opportunity to contract out services where we have no idea how long this situation will actually continue. I just feel it's a liability. I do absolutely agree that the folks out there need help. I become very frustrated that the folks that are responsible for fixing this have not been able to fix it in almost the 2 years we've been involved. They're no closer now than they were when they started issuing this a long time ago. So,
and just for one more point.
Jim,
Sorry, we'll continue to administer the contract if we go with the contract services agreement, and to be comparable to existing costs, meaning to save the $1,000 if necessary, it would be directly correlated to being on site 3.5 hours rather than 5 hours. Works out to basically the same amount of the existing weekly cost.
We continue.
Jim, so I was just gonna say that. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, Jim, that I think that I definitely have heard your concern about tying up potential resource at the district and your thoughts about that additional staff person being available to handle operations that we need to handle. And I think, I've heard you loud and clear, and I think that out of that was at least one of the reasons why, we've kind of tried to figure out how to maybe do something that we all felt comfortable with. And so I'm happy that the state of California has decided to say, we're willing to create some funding. They approached us. They said, we'd rather create this fund now in case that it's needed. As you mentioned, it is kind of a contingency. It is to be there in case it's needed. And the hopes is that the property owners continue to be in a position where they take this as their responsibility and they pay for it. But in the case that they don't, and the people out there find themselves, in a way caught in the middle, at least this funding is available to ensure that this contractor that we hope to enter into contract with is able to operate. And so I think that they've made, I don't know if you recall the exact number, Jim, but I think they've made available at least $65,000 if I remember correctly. But the question that I had for Dan was, I kind of see on the proposal, the 3 month, the 6 month, the 1 year, the 2 year, and then there's an associated savings with the 1 year and the 2 year. And I'm wondering if the contractor would how do you, I don't know the word, if he would what do you call it, acknowledge the fact that it's a 1 year if it was accumulated in, let's say, 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, would he hold to that, or because, and the reason I ask that is if the state made $65,000 available, does that cover at least 1 year? I don't really know the answer to that. So I'm just kind of thinking, long term, if we're willing as a district to provide this support by helping the state administer the grant funding that they are willing to make available to sustain this type of operation, and that funding can carry us out for a year, can we try to secure that so that we get those savings? And I guess the question is, can we get to that point even if we go on a 3 month, 3 month, 3 month, 3 month, or a 6 month, 6 month? I think I heard you, Dan, say that that the proposal now is to go on a 3-month, and then we can add additional terms to that. But again, do we get to benefit from the savings if we get to the 1 year?
Sure. First of all, I think the annual total based on existing would be somewhere in the range of $168,000 a year at 3683. If we stayed at that number, obviously it'd be 12,000 more, or 180,000 a year if we went up $1,000.
Actually,
No, it'd be 48. Yeah,
4655 times 52 is $242,000.
you're using a calculator.
I am.
But the actual savings as noted on the proposal were for holidays, meaning he isn't charging us overtime on holidays, which never happens with a contractor anyway. We tried to negotiate down based on 1 year and 2 year, and he remained at $95 an hour. The travel time is from Hemet, so it's actually, he's only charging us an hour for mobilization and setup, and I think that's all he was willing to do. He's the closest that we could find, and the savings was just zero overtime. So there's no difference whether it's 3 months, 1 year, or 2 years. It's still $95 an hour.
Okay.
And we just thought a 3-month contract would give us more wiggle room in negotiations with him as we administer, and we continue to evolve with this situation.
That makes sense. I'm fully in support of the 3 months now. It makes sense what you just said.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to approve 10?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that passed 5-0. Thank
Thank
you.
you, gentlemen.
All right, so I know we're going to lose
Thank you.
Director Estrada, so I think we'll go back to get back on schedule here. I don't think we did, actually.
Written communications.
Written communications received, there was one about somebody in the Indio service area. You redirected him. And then we have a census informational report.
Yes,
So, yeah, you doing this one?
I am. Let me just make sure I have my,
Go ahead.
And as that's being teed up, I have my colleague Jeremy Holm on the Zoom line today. Our firm has a special practice group that anticipated with the census the need to assist our clients with redrawing divisional boundaries. So this is part of a firm-wide operation that is obviously more cost-effective to our clients. Jeremy would serve as sort of the attorney liaison with Sylvia as we move forward. So just wanted to give you that introduction.
that's on slide 22. I'm just kidding. We do have.
Just in case he types up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just doing a general overview. What is redistricting? Redistricting is the process of adjusting the lines of voting districts in accordance with population shifts. The district went from at-large to by district back in 2014 and is currently using the existing boundary map. The current boundaries were drawn to equally distribute population by division as far as practicable. For California agencies, the redistricting process means that we have to redraw the legislative district lines every 10 years following the decennial census. In the modern era of redistricting, all district lines must be reviewed after the census to meet strict requirements for population equality and voting rights protections. California law sets deadlines for when most of the local jurisdictions must complete the redistricting process. The deadlines are tied to the release of California-specific population data as part of the census. Under the federal law, state populations data for the 2020 census was to be published no later than March of this year. So the actual release of the census data was delayed due to COVID and the pandemic. The U.S. Bureau was delayed in completing the mandate to complete the census on time, resulting in a 6-month delay. So the information should have been released out in March. We're currently looking at States should receive the information in the end of August, and that information will be evaluated by the state and then released out to the different agencies. So we anticipate the district receiving that census data sometime in the end of September. And so a quick timeline of what we're looking at with the process. So as I mentioned, the completion of the census data, the initial schedule was July of 2020. Due to COVID, that was extended out into October of 2020. The census was to release the official population data March 31st of 2021. That has been delayed and is anticipated again to be released sometime in August of 2021 to states. Let's see, that meaning again that the information should be relayed down to the district sometime in end of September 2021, and the deadline for the district, for our agency to adopt a new map should the census data require that, and be able to have our seats up for election in the November 2022 election is May 12th. Let's see, a snapshot of the process under the Elections Code, Section 22,000. Every special district has established district-based elections, and we must redistrict to adjust district boundaries after each census. The district uses the census as a basis to adjust the boundaries of any division so that the divisions are, as far as practical, equal in population, and in compliance with Section 10301 of Title 52 of the U.S. Code. As amended, let's see, special districts are required by its authorizing act to adjust division boundaries pursuant to this section. So one of the nice things about special districts is our requirements for the redistricting process is significantly less stringent than most cities and counties go through. And then I will turn this part over to Jeremy Holmes, which is our BBK counsel and expert in this area.
Good morning, President Powell and members of the board. Like was mentioned in my introduction, my name is Jeremy Holm. I'm a member of BBK Special Districts and Election Law Practice Group. I'm just here to provide a brief overview of the legal requirements just for the board to consider as they move forward with electing how to proceed through the redistricting process. So in terms of map requirements, the criteria for special districts is that the maps must be equal in population. That's a term of art that I'll explain in the next slide, but must also comply with the United States Constitution, the California Constitution, and the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. Essentially, it all boils down to avoiding drawing divisions in a method that results in an election that's not equally open to participation by a member of a protected class. In the context of the Voting Rights Act and the Constitution, this usually means race. So typically, you want to have a member of a protected class have an opportunity to participate in the political process and elect representatives of their choice. You don't want to have a member of a protected class have less opportunity than other members of the electorate to elect a candidate of choice. It's one vote, one candidate. Next slide, please. And in terms of the equal in population requirement, again, it doesn't have to be exactly equal. There's some population variance. I believe the California Constitution lists the requirement as substantially equal. So the ultimate goal for these divisions is to have a less than 5% population variance. Now, case law and the statutes allow variances over 5% that are justified by secondary factors. However, 15% based on case law appears to be the extreme in terms of variances. And any variances over 5%, between 5% and 15%, have to be justified by secondary factors provided by statute as well. And next slide. So in terms of secondary factors, the board can consider topography, So natural landmarks and barriers acting as a logical boundary for a division, geography-based differences, so if you have more rural or urban areas, cohesive considerations, so there's location-based differences unique to individual divisions. That one's a little bit of a catch-all. The divisions must be contiguous, so drawing them as a single mass rather than multiple unconnected areas. Integrity, communities should be divided into separate divisions, should be avoided being divided into separate divisions. Compactness, so all the points in the division need to be kept as close as possible, as opposed to drawing out a very thin, elongated district. And then a community of interest. So the citizens in each division should share common interests and concerns. So they're electing a representative that will represent their interests and concerns. Next slide, please. So in terms of procedural requirements, for special districts, you have to hold at least 2 public hearings. One hearing before the vote to adopt the map of the proposed boundaries, and then one hearing where the legislative body votes to adopt the map of the proposed boundaries. Now, this is different. I'm sure staff and the board might be aware of the Fair Maps Act. Luckily, the Fair Maps Act only applies to cities and counties currently, and it basically outlines a significant process with a significant amount of hearings and public outreach at a much higher level than is what is currently required of special districts. There was an attempt earlier this year to apply the Fair Maps Act to special districts. It was SB 443, but all those provisions regarding applying the Fair Maps Act to special districts were actually gutted from the bill. So right now, it seems like that was the final attempt, and we should be good for this census redistricting process and not have to worry about it for another decade. Next slide. So in terms of carrying out the actual redistricting process, there's essentially 2 main options. There's the traditional method, which is a staff-led effort. And then there's the formation of one of the many types of a redistricting commission. Next slide. So under the traditional staff method, the board would retain a demographer. The staff and the demographer would review the census data, take public input, conduct the 2 hearings, and then approve the map, or if the population hasn't changed significantly, approve the same map. Next slide. And here's where the process can get a little complicated. So depending on the board's desired level of control over the process, the district could establish one of 3 types of a commission. So the first is an advisory redistricting commission, the second is an independent redistricting commission, and the third is a hybrid of the 2. Typically, this can add a significant amount of time, about 4 or 5 months onto the process. This timetable accounts for selecting applicants, soliciting applicants, appointing applicants, training the applicants, and the requirements under the Act. And given the delay of the census data, electing to proceed with a redistricting commission could be done, but would run very, very close to the timetable. Next slide, please. So just to explain the 3 types of commissions in a little bit more detail. So an advisory district commission, the board directly appoints the advisory commission to conduct some of the public hearings and solicit input for the board. But the board retains the final decision on the map. It's basically similar to a lot of the other advisory commissions that have been used by public agencies. Next slide. And an independent redistricting commission, this is where the entire process is handed over to a separate commission who makes the final decision on the map. Basically, the board, after appointing the commission, has very little involvement. And as mentioned earlier, this can be the most complex process because the agency must recruit, appoint, and educate an entirely new body of citizens to perform this work. It takes a significant amount of time to get everyone up to speed. And this also requires, just as a procedural matter, an ordinance or resolution setting out an appointment process. So the board would have to decide just exactly how the appointment process would work out, how we select how you select candidates to interview, et cetera. Next slide, please. So the Hybrid Redistricting Commission has the same pitfalls as the Independent Commission. So, it's a very complex process where you have to interview, et cetera. However, the Hybrid Redistricting Commission approves 2 or more draft maps. And while the board gets to make the final choice, that choice is limited to the menu of maps approved by the commission. Basically, the Hybrid Commission will select, will approve of some draft maps, and then the board will select between those maps. Next slide, please. And this is probably the most complex part of the use of a commission. So with the use of a commission, it's required under law for a demographer to be involved in the process. And in just terms of general rules, any commissioner cannot be someone employed by the district in this case, or a family member, staff member, campaign staff to a locally elected official from the jurisdiction as well. Next slide. And then for hybrid independent commissions, the rules get more complicated again. So any member of these commissions cannot have run for office within the jurisdiction in the preceding 8 years. They cannot have served as an officer of, an employee of, paid consultant to, or campaign worker for an officer of the jurisdiction, or have been registered to lobby in the jurisdiction, or contributed $500 or more in a year to any candidate for elective office within the jurisdiction. So that significantly limits the pools of interested applicants in order to serve on one of these redistricting commissions. And then similar to the general rules for the independent and hybrid commissions, there's similar restrictive rules as the ones laid out on the slide that apply to family members of a potential member of these commissions as well. Next slide. And then again, to further add to the complexity, so there are a significant amount of rules regarding the conduct of commission members. So just to start out, commission members cannot, while serving on the commission, endorse, work for, volunteer for, or make a campaign contribution to a candidate for elective office in the local jurisdiction. They also can't be a candidate for elective office in the local jurisdiction for at least 5 years after they're appointed for the commission. Or, and this is an important one because this potentially would bar for basically a decade. If the map he adopted is still in use, that's a pretty big restriction. And then again, the commissioners can't work for their jurisdiction, receive a non-competitively bid contract from the jurisdiction, or can't be registered as a lobbyist for the jurisdiction for at least 4 years after their appointment to the commission. And then much like other general requirements, they have to file a Form 700 as a designated employee, and the commission meetings are subject to the Brown Act, and any sort of records are subject to the California Public Records Act as well. Next slide. So timeline. This was mentioned a little bit earlier, but the process must be completed 180 days before the next election after the census. CBWD is scheduled for an election on November 8th, 2022. So that means that this entire process would need to be completed by May 12th, 2022. And there's still a significant amount of time to conduct the 2 hearings, or however the board would want to proceed through this process. And I believe I'm going to hand this back over to Sylvia.
So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. So Jeremy and I put together a proposed schedule for us, again, all dependent on when the district receives the data. We anticipate to receive the data sometime towards the end of September, at which time the board will have to determine the process that we'd like to take redistricting. We're looking at should the board choose to, should the data show a need for redrawing the lines, receiving the data sometime in late September, we could look at our first initial public meeting sometime in November, December. It does make it a little difficult because of the holidays, but we'd like to try and get that in, at least that initial one, so that we can move forward and still make the May deadline. So the initial public meeting would be in November or December, and that would be just to discuss the process overview and request for some public input. The initial public meeting is required to be held prior to the release of the draft maps, as Jeremy mentioned. The first actual public hearing to discuss potential drafts would be in January sometime, with the a public presentation to discuss any revised draft options in February, and putting us at about a March time. Is that me? No? Okay. Putting us at sometime in March, late March, for our second and hopefully final public hearing, at which time the board would consider adoption of the maps. Again, as mentioned, the deadline to adopt the map would be in May, May 12th to be exact. And so if the board were not able to adopt the maps in March, we would still have about a month to make any additional revisions or address any concerns there on that map. So at this time, we're just looking for some recommendations. Staff is asking the board to, or requesting direction to proceed with the traditional method staff effort, which means we would not create any type of committee for this, to direct staff to retain a demographer and seek out BBK service. Jeff mentioned prior to the presentation that BBK has essentially established this division within their firm that deals specifically with the census and redistricting process, so they'd be able to provide the demographer process and assist in any public hearings, outreach, and so forth moving forward. And then also staff would develop a calendar for the redistricting schedule.
Okay.
And we have reached the end, if there's any questions.
If I may, just real quickly, as you can see, the formation of a commission to any degree, because of COVID, would be very difficult to do. It's not recommended from our perspective. But just because a separate commission is not formed doesn't mean there's not going to be full-fledged public involvement. Right. There's going to be full-fledged public involvement in terms of outreach. We provide information to your outreach staff to get out the information. We have not only public hearings, but public meetings before each one to go over all this information. We have the materials by which we invite members of the public, if they wish, to draw their own maps. So there's a lot of public participation along the way, but leaving the final decision on the maps to this board of directors. So for a flat fee, we work with staff, with a demographer we have on staff, to provide you the tools you need to, one, do public outreach, get public input, various points in the process, before you even get to drawing maps. And then after maps are drawn.
Director Powell.
And then proceeding at that point.
Costello.
Okay, go ahead.
Director Estrada.
So before I jump off, I just wanted to make sure I was able to put in my 2 cents here. And I think what I'm hearing from our clerk is that the staff recommendation is that we go with kind of the traditional method that doesn't include forming a commission, and it's more just staff working with, I don't know what you called it, demographer. And what I'm hearing is our attorney saying that BB&K would work with the demographer to do the outreach, to kind of maybe, show us the roadmap and check all the boxes that we need to check to at the end get to an approved map. And so if that's the recommendation, I just I want to say that I'm in agreement with that. But the one thing that I'm concerned about and that I really want to just emphasize here and put it on the record is, although I appreciate BB&K's offer to, and maybe it's still on the table and it still works out. So it's not an either or, but I really want to make sure that as part of this process, we also work with folks that understand the uniqueness of our district, of our communities, of our different divisions. And so I just want to make sure that as part of this effort that involves outreach, that involves, and I don't know what type of components would be required to ensure that, you know, we're doing the proper community outreach, but I just want to make sure that we're thoughtful about that we think and that we know and that we recognize that, you know, our communities are different. And so let's make sure that as we go down this road, we think about that.
Yeah, just to be clear, we would not be customer facing. Customer facing is this board of directors and CBWD staff. So Best Western Krieger is not customer facing on this for the reasons that were just mentioned by the Vice President.
Right. But we will have plenty of outreach from CBWD.
And the schedule and the required, the initial and the 2 public hearings is just what is required. If the board had a desire to hold an extra workshop or an extra 2 workshops, we could definitely try and fit that into a schedule. It's just we outlined what legally CBWD is required to do in the process. But if there is a desire to add a workshop, we can definitely look at that and add something into the schedule.
And are we bringing this back for discussion at some
Correct.
point?
Once we receive the data, this is just kind of an overview. We really won't know until we receive the data. The data will determine whether there is a need, whether the population has shifted significantly or increased in a certain area that would require us to look at redrawing those lines. If the data shows that the population growth isn't significant, the board could choose to just readopt the existing boundaries.
So is there a scenario where we don't get the census data in time and we're not able to do this process prior to our next election?
Actually, our office does have contact with the demographers who have contact with the state, and our understanding is that they will be providing the information in a timely fashion based on the schedule we set forth today.
So it's not foreseeable that we would?
No.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, I thought, I agree with the recommendation also.
Okay. Yeah, we'll come back in September and receive that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We just want to go through the whole process now because you are probably going to get questions about this in the public.
And it was more so just should the board had desired to do a redistricting commission, that would require us to start moving forward now because of the timeline to establish one of the 3 commissions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
For the presentation.
Yes.
All right. On to the remaining action items. We have 10A. This is the unfunded liability prepayment.
Good morning, President Powell, members of the board.
Yeah, you know, in the online on the item, it said that there would be information. This is below as a summary, but there was no summary.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I apologize for the board and the public that
this is?
Yes.
Apparently, I don't know if it was a glitch in the system, if it was user error on my part, but when I made the final changes to this item, I thought it had revised, and apparently I discovered last night it had not.
Out.
So the board has before them the accurate staff report, and I'd ask if we could bring that up on the screen so that the public could see what I'll be referring to. And Can you zoom in on the chart on page 2?
So they killed it. I've had a feeling.
Yeah,
They were estimating 5% and they got 21.3.
they did. Well, no, we were estimating 5%. They were estimating 7%.
right.
So yeah, let me walk you through.
Yeah, I don't understand why.
And I was really frustrated this chart didn't get included because this was in particular addressing Director Nelson's request when we dealt with this item last year to do a review of the actual results for last year's action. How did it turn out? So I'll just walk you through this little chart real quick. So all of this on the top are district assumptions. The CalPERS themselves have always been, or for the past several years, have been assuming a 7% return. We have been using a more conservative figure for last year's estimate. We were estimating that they would be returning a 5% return, where we were estimating their own portfolio would have a 2.1% return for a net gain of 2.9%. As it turned out, the actuals which came in just last week, CalPERS did report a preliminary return of 21.3%, whereas our own actuals, which were hammered by the economy and the pandemic and everything that was happening with treasury rates, et cetera, came in at just 0.36%. So our net difference was just under a 21% gain. For this coming year, I'm holding to the 5% estimate, though CalPERS still has a 7% estimate for themselves. I consulted with our portfolio manager at Chandler, and they are projecting 0.68% for this coming year, for a difference of the more modest 4% plus difference. So you see the estimates of, I was projecting just under a $300,000 gain last year, and it ended up being a $1.5 million. So it ended up being $1.2 million better than I had projected. Now, I do want to say this is a once in a lifetime alignment of the stars for this to be so different. But the strategy that I've been employing is not about taking savings as an offer that CalPERS is making. If you contribute your required contribution early, then we'll let you take a discount. So most entities say, great, we'll love to take that discount. Our district, for the past several years, we've had a focused strategy. We need to attack this unfunded liability because it's been a growing burden on our backs for years.
No, I know, and I don't know that I see that in there. I mean, how much is in our CalPERS fund? It's like 80 million or 100 million or something. Where is that number?
Sure,
because if you earn 21% on that, right? I mean,
that's right.
The earnings would be significant.
And when you think that money is already there. So
they haven't reported it to us yet. We don't know about it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
So it's our present value, as will be reported in the report that's just ready to come out, is $528 million.
All right. So I mean, if we had a 21% earnings on 500 million, right?
Yes.
Then that's $100 million that we weren't expecting. Right? So shouldn't that shrink the unfunded liability?
It is going down, but as the report will show that the projected liabilities continue to go up also. So our factor, is going to be improving significantly. But on this next report, it's still not going to include this 21% gain. They're always a year behind.
I understand that, but let's say that our unfunded liability was 120 million.
Yes.
And we beat the estimate by 80, that would shrink it down
Yes.
to 40 million instead of 120 million.
Yes.
I mean, I know we're trying to use guesses on top of numbers that we have never seen, and it's
Yeah,
always-
so
it's
John,
always a year
John, I think if you look at it, we're well above $200 million as the unfunded liability, so that's probably a better ballpark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks, Peter. I don't have a current number, so even so you.
Yeah, I don't either, but that's what I recall.
The current number is going to be reported at 139 million by CalPERS. So that is before considering this gain.
139 million?
Yes.
All right, so you shrink that by 80 and you're down to 60 million.
Yeah. I don't know what they're going to end up coming up with a year from
Right?
now.
So it may be, all right, I think it's safe to say it'll probably get it below 100 million.
This all gets to the point that we talked about at length a year ago, is, where is your trust level, and there's two different elements going on here. It's trust about their actuarial numbers and trust about how they're managing their portfolio. I've had suspicions about their actuarial numbers because they tend to be politically motivated. And our CalPERS actuary has conceded that point.
Yeah, of course.
On the management of the portfolio in the past, I also had discomfort about how they were managing things. But I do think that they've made significant structural changes in how they're managing their investment process now. And I am very comfortable. So to me, this is a bet about getting our money in their portfolio earlier to take advantage of what I believe to be slightly higher earnings potential in a very safe way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm just trying to get a little background of where we
Yes.
are. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
So with that, I would ask staff to, again, recommend that we ask the board to approve participation in this program. We will be, if you approve that, we'll be wiring the full UAL contribution now, so it'll be put right in our portfolio right away.
Okay.
I would move approval of the action item.
Good, we have a motion and a second.
President Powell?
Yeah, roll call, aye.
Got ahead of myself. Let's see, it looks like Director Strata has left us, so Director Bianco?
Aye.
Director Aguilar?
Aye.
And Director Nelson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, so that passed 4-0 with one absent. Yeah, too bad we don't get value for our money if we pay our taxes early. Huh? But at least this one you do. Well, it might go up, it might go down, but
Right.
yeah. 10B, this is yours also, Jeff?
Sure. Thank you. This is an item requesting the board to approve authorization to have the general manager execute an agreement for cost of service study services with Nugent Strategies for our sanitation cost of service study. We had two firms that were that bid on this. Our evaluation panel conducted interviews with both of those firms. I would just give you a couple of tidbits from that. Is the lead person for this outfit we were very impressed with. They thoroughly demonstrated their model, which is a key to our confidence in their being able to do this work. And also they're bringing on West Yost, a engineering firm, to help with the validation for the CIP plan, and I'm hoping that they'll be getting involved with that as we can validate our current 5-year CIP plan at the outset of this study and get board comfort levels and acceptance before we get too far into the study, which will end up impacting the future rate recommendations. With that, staff would recommend approval of the agreement with NewGen, which has an amount of $100,000, which includes a contingency amount of $10,000.
Okay, thank you.
Is there one more item you wanted to bring up about a consultant?
No.
update?
Not unless it's, yes.
I'm referring to a previous consultant that the district had employed that has been picked up by these.
There's a consultant who's a partner with this and has a minimal involvement of 32 hours, Mark Hildebrand, and he has been built into the team to give NewGen advice and help them get up to speed on the complex nature of our operations.
They put him in the bolster there.
You think?
And that is his role.
Okay. Thank you.
Last time, did I miss this? The last time we did this study, cost of service study?
I don't think so.
I don't
Have
think
we
we've
ever-
had one.
I don't think we've ever done one.
We had one, we had one that was planned before, but ended up being basically, instead of implementing rates, was a restructuring of,
We found data irregularities.
yeah.
But why haven't we had one? Because there was a law that's required that.
No, it's not by law.
So it's not by law that we have a cost of service study for sanitation.
It's recommended, but
To make your rates legally defensible in court, if they're challenged, you need to have a cost of service study
Right.
as part of the background.
And we're supposed to do a cost of service study once every 10 years if we sell to a public agency. We do them every 5 years because it's hard to project every 10 years.
But sanitation is not included in that requirement.
no.
We have to use a 218.
We haven't done one.
We did one previously.
We did it, but it ended up.
It's 1 year, it's a year off from the other.
Yes.
I just asked you guys, and you guys told me that
It-
you've never done one before.
No, I'm sorry. I miss.
Did we do?
We did it, but as I understand, the original plan for that study kind of morphed midway through the process and ended up being more of a focus on a revamping of how we were calculating rates.
We had a lot of customers classified wrong, right? Wasn't that it?
We were getting more revenue from one particular segment of the sector of the population than we were from others. So we did a cost of service study.
Yes.
We did a sanitation cost of service study 5 years ago, and now it's time to do another one.
I vaguely remember that.
Our rates.
5 years ago, or was it the first year I was on?
It was over
Yeah.
2000, yes. It was
So
over
6 years ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago.
But I think we,
Like, we didn't have to do this
We-
by law, so
and
if
well-
we didn't have to do this by law, then, you know.
No,
but it-
I think we should do it because we have,
yeah, we have issues.
Okay.
I think we should do it. Do we have a motion to approve this item?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, I think we got Director Aguilar in for the second there. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
And next, we only have two more. Construction contract for the Fairway Drive.
Don Wilcox.
Don Wilcox.
Good morning, President Powell, board members, and public staff. My name is Donald Wilcox, Senior Sanitation Engineer.
Hey, Donald, is your mic on?
Blue light.
Yep, thank you.
Here we go.
Thanks, Don.
And I'll be presenting in place of Armando Rodriguez this morning.
Okay.
We're seeking board authorization for the award of a construction contract to the Van Dyke Corporation as the lowest responsive bidder for the sewer pipeline rehabilitation project on Fairway Drive, specification number 2020-65, in the amount of $744,245. We're also seeking additional funds for a total request of $907,097. In short, the project will replace approximately 1,350 linear feet of 10-inch pipe, 4 manholes, and sewer laterals to reestablish pipeline capacity and reliability. This will eliminate quarterly inspections by maintenance staff and mitigate potential for sanitary sewer overflows, private lateral backups, and odor formation. This concludes my presentation, so I can provide additional details with questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay. So this would be like a construction defect thing, except it was in the 70s, huh? So there's no way to go back.
Yes.
They screwed up.
It lasted this long and now it's failing?
I imagine you've had neighbors complaining about it for probably all of those years. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
discussion with collections staff, they've been doing their quarterly maintenance for like 35 years at least, so.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
So this is before 70s.
Oh, the original installation?
Yes.
Was in the 70s, I think. So
1973.
Oh, it was
73,
1973, okay.
which is a long time ago. Is there a motion to approve 10C?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, pass 4-0 with one absent. And 10D,
Thanks, Don.
this is an excavator. We're going to make out on this one. If I did the math right, we're coming out ahead on this one.
It's a smaller.
It's a smaller excavator.
Well, so you're right sizing, but you're saving.
Yes, absolutely. So the recommendation is to approve the purchase of a 2021 320 CAT excavator, including attachments, in the amount of $241,850. It's also recommended that we approve the salvage value or credit for the existing excavator in the amount of $10,000, including the removal of the unit from the Coachella campus. We would also receive $10,000 in credit, store credit from Quinn Cat. So basically the cost of the excavator is $251,000. We're getting $10,000 off, and we're getting an additional $10,000 for use in the future for parts. So on March 2nd, we had a 336 long reach, which is a much bigger excavator, get lost in a fire due to vandalism and arson. We had parked it near 64 Buchanan, near Highway 86, to be able to do work in the morning. We came back and we lost the excavator in a fire. They attempted to get in the machine, and then somehow they caught it on fire. So the replacement cost was $402,375. We had additional costs of $26,000 for removal and hazmat waste as a result of the fire. And then with the deductible deletion in the amount of $50,000, the net amount received was $369,044. We received that check in May. We've spent almost 2 months determining what the right approach would be to satisfy the best business need. And we selected a 320 excavator. It's smaller, it's lighter, it can get in the channel in saturated soils and stay on top of the soils more efficiently in an emergency. And instead of having a long reach on the boom, it's a short reach, so we can do more actual excavation work. So it gives us more versatility and something different from a long reach. Again, as Director Powell alluded to, or President Powell, we're going to be saving about $160,000 had we just replaced in kind. The amount of $241,000 is not included in the fiscal year budget. We were not able to get it into the budget, but because we received the check in May, we're hoping that the board takes that into consideration, and we have a budget amendment in the amount of $241,000 that we are requesting. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
So if we need a long reach, we would just go and rent one?
Oh, no, we have 3 additional long reaches. We use the long reaches a lot for drains and canal work, but we don't have anything really this light and this versatile to be able to work in saturated clays and in the channel and the drains, so.
Dan, who pays the fee to Sourcewell, the procurement firm?
I don't think there is a fee. Sourcewell is a cooperative that is similar to a government bid solicitation process. So they solicit bids directly from the manufacturers, and we have the ability to use that cooperative as a public agency. So.
Okay, because I didn't see a cost built in for Sourcewell into the breakdown, so.
No.
Thank you. I'll move the item.
Second.
Good. Yeah, roll call, please.
President Powell?
Aye.
Director Bianco?
Aye.
Director Aguilar?
Aye.
And Director Nelson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. That passed 4-0 with 1 absent. Yep. All right, board member general comments, Director Nelson.
Yeah, I only have one comment. I think the last comment I made is that it was dry in our last meeting, and certainly is continuing to be that way. This afternoon, from 1 to 5, the State Water Resources Control Board is conducting a public, an opportunity for public to comment on their emergency curtailment and reporting regulation for the Sacramento and San Joaquin Delta watershed. Back in May, the governor declared a state of emergency for some counties. And then in June 15th, the State Water Resources Control Board sent a letter out to post-1914 diverters that curtailments were coming. And now on August 3rd, the State Board is considering to send curtailment notices to pre-1914 diverters in the watershed. So that's certainly distressing that it's that dry, and also some consider the board's action to potentially be an overreach on those 1914 rights. So it's interesting times in the state. I hate to see those kinds of things happening, and like I say, there is an opportunity for comments this afternoon. So that's really all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Director Aguilar?
I have no comments.
Director Bianco?
No comments, just saying glad to be back.
Yeah, welcome back. So I just have, check with me in an hour and it'll be different, but new headline, CDC to urge vaccinated people to resume wearing masks indoors in some areas. So it's the counties that have higher. And we already heard that from LA County that they're, I think, requiring it. So get ready. It's going to change again. I already put all my masks away. I was going to put them away till next year.
Flu season.
Yeah, what's next year? I don't know. You know how you put your sweaters away when the winter ends?
Some mothballs.
So get ready for more masking. It's just crazy. I tried to put my son-in-law on a plane to go to Sweden, and he had to go through London, and they wouldn't let him on the plane because he didn't have and you have to have your negative test within 72 hours of landing or being in the United Kingdom, and good luck getting one, because the Riverside, he got it in Riverside County, and they were backed up, so they didn't have his lab result, and they wouldn't let him on the plane. So he changed airlines, flew through Denmark, and everything was fine. It's just ridiculous. All right, whatever. Those are my comments. Just get ready. Roll with it. So this brings us to General Manager comment.
Yes, sir. Just a few items. On the COVID updates, we've had 94 positive cases overall. We've got 1 current positive case, 3 direct contacts. So we've got 4 folks off work. Our positive case should be back to work tomorrow. The positive contacts are all household members. There's only 1 that's self-symptomatic. So for the month of July, we've had 3 cases. July is almost over. Vaccination status we've got 530 folks that have responded. Of those 530, 62% are fully or partially vaccinated, 35% are not vaccinated, then we've got about 3% that are still on leave or wherever. I did want to bring to the board's attention that we are going to try and restart our strategic planning process. We've got a couple of dates that we're looking at based on the consultant. I think we've got 2 dates in October, 1 date in November, and 2 dates in December. Again, trying to get this wrapped up before we get too far into the budget process. So we're kind of hoping that we might be able to get your availability. I think, I don't know whether Sylvia's pushed an email out or not, but Robert has asked me to bring this up. He's tied up in a clean water partnership with the American Water Works Association. The last thing I have is to make an introduction. Katie would do this if she were here, but she's out on vacation. So Victoria Lort, if you would just say hi. Victoria is here as our government liaison and regional coordinator. She's had, most recently, she comes from Mission Springs Water District, where she was there for 2 years. And prior to that, she was with the county working for Supervisor Perez. So she'll be coming in to make reports on a regular basis because she'll be doing legislation and coordination for us.
Welcome. Yeah.
Happy to have her. And that's all I've got, sir.
You're going to love it here. Do we have a council report?
No, I will pass in the interest of time, Mr. President.
And any department reports?
No, sir, not at this time, although Victoria will be working on one.
Yes. So at this time, the board will recess into closed session for discussion of the 1 item on the agenda. We will reconvene here afterwards to report out on the closed session. I think we're going to do it because that's where the food is. Secretariat, is physically different than everybody else. So regular meeting is hereby reconvened. We have no reportable action from closed session, and with no further business and hearing no objection, we are adjourned.
Thank you,
Get out of here.